What is up, guys? I'm back here with another college football video. This time we're going to be doing week one predictions and an update to my top 25. Obviously, week zero games have gone in the books, and it's time to look forward to what is going to be coming up in college football. And obviously, the results of the week zero games did have an impact on the top 25 that I have. So I'm going to be putting that out at the end of this video so you guys can go ahead and look at that. But yeah, we're going to start off with the biggest games of this week. And so let's go ahead and get right into it. So we're going to start off with the North Carolina and Minnesota game. And let's see. I think that this game is actually pretty difficult to predict. At first, I had one team, then I switched it up and went to the other team after I did a little bit more research. It does take place at Minnesota, so they do have the edge there. But both of these teams should look very different than they did last season. It's hard to predict the quality of either team because of that. And I think I do lean Minnesota just because North Carolina looks to have a pretty bad defense, just like they did last year. And I think that Minnesota's offensive line and running back will be able to take advantage of that. Then again, I do have concerns about Minnesota's defensive line. So, which I guess, it's the same, pretty much the same concern on both sides. And I think that North Carolina does have one of the best running backs in the sport, so they could also take advantage of Minnesota's defensive line. I think both of them will be able to take advantage of each other's weaknesses there. And while I do think North Carolina is a more balanced offense, I think that North Carolina's defense is a bit worse, and it will be bad enough for Minnesota to really take control of the game. The next game I have is Florida and Miami, and while I do think that Miami is hands down the better team, playing in the swamp is never easy, and I do think Florida is better than people expect, but I'm really high on the Canes this year, so I think they're going to take care of business in week one. I think this game is going to be a game that's going to be won at the line of scrimmage, and I think that favors Miami. From reports I've heard, Florida is really struggling up front on their offensive line, and I think Miami is really, really good along their defensive line and at the edge position. So it's a matchup I would keep an eye on. I think Miami's defense will be able to disrupt Florida's pass game and their run game. I also think Miami is just a more complete offense. They have a really good quarterback. They have an excellent running back. They have tons of great pass catchers, and not to mention that they have a pretty solid offensive line as well. Miami's one major weakness is their secondary, though, but I don't think Florida has the receivers to really take advantage of that. Nothing that really scares me or jumps out to me in this game, so I really don't think Florida's going to be able to keep up with Miami. So for that reason, I'm picking Miami. Notre Dame versus Texas A&M is my next game. This game is at Kyle Field, and I think that definitely gives an upper hand to A&M. But to be honest, I don't really have a really good feeling about this game because I could see either team winning it, and I think there are mismatches on both sides. I don't think this game is as heavily favored towards A&M as a lot of people may think. I do believe in Mike Elko and the potential A&M has to be a national championship contender, but in this game, I'm really interested in seeing how the quarterback versus former head coach dynamic really plays out. What team will it benefit? Will it benefit Notre Dame or Texas A&M? I lean that it's going to benefit A&M more because he knows the weaknesses of his former quarterback better than most. And Notre Dame is the thing is Notre Dame is really good this year. They're physical, and I think they have some really high level talent at receiver. I believe this may be one of the best Notre Dame teams we've seen in a while. But there's one major flaw, and that's that their offensive line is really new. They have a lot of youngness at the offensive line, and when going up against Texas A&M's defense and their secondary, I think that really is what's going to be the turning point for Texas A&M, and that's why I'm picking Texas A&M in this game. Next, I have the LSU versus USC game, and this is a really interesting game to me because I think both teams are in a pretty similar position. They both have had dynamite offenses and pitiful defenses. Both have made real efforts to overhaul their defensive line and defensive staff, or not defensive line, but their defensive staff. Both are replacing generational Heisman-winning quarterbacks, and I really do feel good about LSU in this game. I think it's the game I might be most confident in for week one. I trust Brian Kelly more than I trust Lincoln Riley, to be honest with you, especially when it comes to defense. And I think that it's going to be a really high-scoring game, but I just trust LSU to make more defensive stops. And although I think LSU will have to travel farther, I believe it's happening in Nevada, So that's something to note. I just think LSU is going to be able to take care of this game in week 1. The next game I have is Clemson versus Georgia. And I know I said LSU versus USC is the game I'm most confident on, but I lied. I think this is actually the game I'm most confident about. And I think Georgia's going to play its flag in the bends. I know I might be biased because I'm a Georgia fan and all, but I don't see this being a super close game. I think that it might not be quite the blowout that the Oregon game was, but I definitely don't expect a close game. And I think Georgia is better in almost every aspect. For Clemson to have a fighting chance in this game, they're going to need a combination of Georgia mistakes, turnovers, bounce a ball, and the best run game Clemson could possibly muster up. But that is the running game could be really, really effective against Georgia because if there is a weakness on Georgia's team, it may be their defensive line. Not that it's a bad defensive line, it's actually a really good defensive line, but it's not what Kirby Smart's had in the past, and it's probably the weakest link of this specific team. And like I said, Clemson has a really stellar running back in Phil Maffa, but I just think it's unlikely that Georgia's going to drop this game. They're the better team. I think that they're more prepared in week 1. We've seen them, every year that they just come out swinging in week 1, and they're coming off of a heartbreaking season. I think they're more familiar with the bends, and I just think that they're very much in position to win this game. And the last game I have, probably the most controversial take that I have, is West Virginia versus Penn State. I don't think this is a game that can be easily overlooked. I know that on paper Penn State is a much better team, but I think that gap is not quite as wide as many people expect. And West Virginia gets to play the game at home. They have an excellent offensive line, a dual threat quarterback, a great rushing attack, a good secondary, great defensive line that can generate pressure. They got a lot of stuff going right for them. And I'm really high on Penn State this year, but they may see regression on defense. However, they do have a great 1-2 punch at running back and some solid pass catchers for what Penn State expects to be an improved Drew Aller at quarterback. But I just don't think it all is going to be put together in week 1. So I'm picking West Virginia for the upset this week. I think it's a really sneaky game that West Virginia can get into a rock fight with Penn State and come out on top. So those are my big game predictions for this week. Let me know what you think. I'll be posting these also on my socials. So make sure you're following me on Twitter and Threads and Instagram, and also be subscribed here on YouTube. But now we're going to take a look at my top 25 and how it's changed since the last time you guys have seen it. So if you will notice that obviously there's one team that's missing from this top 25 that was in it last time, and that's SMU. They dropped out to me because I just think that game against Nevada was really sloppy, and I didn't see what I expected to see from them. Now, they could easily jump back into the top 25 because there's a lot of cleaning up that can be done between week 0 and the end of the year. So there's a lot that can go right for them. But just from what I've seen, I'm going to drop them out of it for now. Georgia Tech did move up. They're number 24 now. They were previously not in the top 25, and Florida State moved down to number 21, a pretty drastic move, but I think there's going to be a lot of drastic moves in my top 25 when it comes to the beginning of the season rather than later, because we kind of know what we're getting later. But at the beginning, I'm just kind of getting a feel for these teams and how good they actually are, and I think Florida State showed some major weaknesses that I didn't really expect being there, like their defensive line. And you may be wondering why Florida State is above Georgia Tech, even though Georgia Tech won the game. And that's because, like Josh Pate's model, if you watch his show, this is a power ratings model, not a power rankings model. And basically that just means that this is basically using almost as if you were to use odds, like Vegas odds, to make a top 25, where it's who would win against another team on a neutral field. So basically, I think that if Florida State and Georgia Tech played again on a neutral field, odds makers would have them Florida State winning, basically. And I think the same could be said whenever you pit North Carolina State against Georgia Tech, but I do think Georgia Tech will be favored against Maryland. I hope that makes sense. Basically, just this takes into account which teams I think are the better team, not which teams may be better on a certain day. So I think 9 times out of 10, Georgia Tech loses to Florida State. Florida State lost the one game that mattered, though. So in reality, Florida State's obviously ranked lower, but ratings-wise, I think that they are power ratings-wise a better team, so that's why they are here. I just want to give you guys that little bit of information in case you guys are curious as to why there's a discrepancy here. But that's pretty much it. There's not much else that changed, obviously, because not many games happened, not many of these teams played. But after this week, we should have a lot of movement in this top 25, I'm sure of. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Like I said, follow me on the socials, and have a great rest of your day or night whenever time you're watching this. So yeah, see you guys.